So I got a request to make a video about Leo Gura's video, What is Reality? I wasn't sure I wanted to make another video about Leo Gura, but in this particular video he says it is his highest teaching and summarizes it in two principles. Everything is imaginary, there is nothing but imagination, and you are God, and there is nothing but God, and you are all alone.
This is my highest teaching. Number one, you are God. And there is nothing but God, and you are all alone. That's number one. Number two, everything is imaginary. There is nothing but imagination.
With such a statement, we have something focused and concrete to evaluate his entire teaching on, something that is also up to date. For this reason, and because I did not address his view on reality in my two other videos, it might be worth it to make another one. So what he is basically saying is that everything that seems to exist is ultimately just your own imagination. You are basically just consciousness imagining things, and this is God.
You see, this is very radical.
He says that this is a radical idea, and before I go into the problems with it, I just want to say that it really isn't radical. I have seen other people make similar claims, and it is generally called solipsism or quantum mysticism. We find it in books by Deepak Chopra and others who are into quantum mysticism, and it has been criticized as a misunderstanding of quantum physics because of the word observer. It is not a human observer, not the physicist's observation, which makes the electron behave as a wave. It is the mechanical experimental device which affects the electron in such a way. In other words, it is the confusing language of observer that creates this misunderstanding. The presence of an apparatus changes the behavior of the electron, not the mind of the physicist. Consciousness is not actually a factor, since the observer is an apparatus without consciousness. So even if what Leo says would be true, I can't really say that I'm surprised by what he says. This is not new and shocking and radical ideas. And now to the problems with it.
Billion years have never passed. There is no space. There is no time. You are not a biological living creature. In fact, you were never even born. You do not have parents. You did not have a childhood. You did not grow up. You did not press play at the beginning of this video. You imagined all of that.
The first mistake he does is saying there is no time, because time or movement, change, is one of the principles of ultimate reality. Without time, without movement, you can have nothing, not even imagination. Even imagining things takes time and is a form of process. Because of this fact, it is natural that he would contradict himself. He implies that you develop more and more mistaken belief about reality as you grow in childhood, which is how things get imagined by you, such as world history. But if you never had a childhood, and there is no time, no history, there is also no way for you to change state from less deluded to more deluded over time. Even the process of delusion would be imaginary, because process involves time.
This is the slope we're going to call the slope of reality. When you're born, you start at the very bottom of this slope. There is no reality when you're born. But then, quickly, because you need to keep surviving, you start to learn. What's actually happening is that you're inventing the entire universe. So what's happening through your childhood and teenage years is that you're rolling your way up like a snowball. You are imagining your entire childhood right now. None of it ever happened.
And if there is no process and everything is imaginary, then are we even talking free will here, or is the imagination deterministic? Leo has said before that he came to the realization that there is no free will. But at the end of this video, he also says that what he said in the past has changed.
My teachings have to change after some of the things I've realized recently.
which means this question is left open, since we don't know exactly what he has changed his mind about. Which means we should apply the timeless parameters all over again on this video. Let me first say that, regardless of Leo saying that even religion is imaginary,
Religion is imaginary.
he is still trying to legitimize his teaching by pointing towards religious and spiritual concepts. For example, he implies that the aim is to stop imagining existence so that you die, and says this is nirvana or paradise.
And this is the discovery of nirvana or paradise.
He also uses the common metaphor of the bowl or cup that must be emptied.
A bowl of rice must be empty to contain the rice.
However, this is a misunderstanding or bastardization of these spiritual concepts. Nirvana is not to surrender existence itself, making it disappear, as if you alone created it. Nirvana, or ego death, is to surrender your delusions and preferences about reality and existence, because if you do that, you will be nourished by existence. In Leo's definition of nirvana and reality, you are nourished by nothing but emptiness and aloneness. You are alone and nothing existed, and that's it.
But also understand that if and when you ever get there, you will be all alone as God.
Similarly, the bowl of rice metaphor is intended to reflect your attitude, to empty yourself of expectations and beliefs in order to become receptive to new knowledge or experiences. His take on reality as being imaginary is superficially similar to the concept of Maya, but the real meaning of Maya is that the ego lives in a world of delusions, that your own conceptions and beliefs about the world are illusions, not that the external world is imaginary. He also mentions the dark night of the soul, which is when spiritual insights begin to be used in service of the ego and personal gain. But Leo defines it as not being able to tell the difference between reality and imagination, similar to a psychotic break.
When you are no longer able to trust your own memories, and you're not even able to trust your own parents as being real, that's when stuff gets difficult. That's when you start to encounter what they call the dark night of the soul.
Another similarity is the Hermetic principle of mentalism, that all is mind. But mentalism is the idea that we are a creation in the creator's imagination, not that we ourselves are that creator. Now you could argue that Leo's interpretation is the correct one and mine and others is incorrect. But if that is the case, then it should also be consistent with other spiritual expressions, such as the idea that we're created in God's image, or Jesus' statement that no one comes to the Father but through him, which is the very reason why the principle of mentalism says we are imagined by God, not that we are imagining ourselves. But the fact that we can imagine things means we are similar to God, created in God's image. Quantum mechanics can also be used to support real spirituality in the Taoist sense, that nature decides our thoughts and manifestations. But this runs completely contrary to quantum mysticism and Leo's view. And our interpretation should also be consistent with timeless parameters, which are nothing less than the essential aspects of real spirituality. And my interpretation, along with many others, is indeed in line with timeless parameters. But what about Leo's interpretation? His aim of ending existence, since it is imagination, and become aware of aloneness and of being God, implies a goal. But if that is the goal, then why isn't that our reality right now? Surrender implies acceptance, and acceptance implies receptivity and non-avoidance. So why should we avoid our imagined existence? Perhaps we as God started imagining things in the first place to forget that aloneness or that we are God. Maybe what we experience as reality is God's self-induced therapy. Leo is not being a very good philosopher here. And since it is our supposed imagination that created pain, unhealthy expressions, and also the mundane, there can obviously be no real respect or reverence for these things in Leo's metaphysics.
You're imagining everything, including your emotions, the highest ones and the lowest ones, pain, suffering.
Thus it fails at properly realizing point 4, 5, 7, and also point 6 and 10, all of which are necessary to feel fulfilled. Ironically, this also means that love loses its meaning and value, since also all the good and beautiful things we experience are just our imagination and disappear in Leo's nirvana. It also sets up a dualism between awakening as God, which is good, and existence, which is imagined and bad. I'm not sure Leo is saying we should imagine a new reality or just stop imagining a reality altogether, but either way it results in a problem for the soul. The soul doesn't get nourished by aloneness, but to imagine a more perfect reality implies the aim of control, but achieving control implies passage of time, which contradicts there not being any time. We should have control right now if that was the case, and imagine memories of us not having control. Again, we must ask, is any action even possible in a conception of reality such as this with no time? Because without time everything is static and should be achieved right now. But even if you did take control, how would you know that even that is not imaginary?
If you've taken some psychedelics, then you're a little bit more open-minded to the things I'm saying. That's because what a psychedelic does is it elevates your state of consciousness to the point where your consciousness becomes fluid enough. Usually it's in a very crystallized form. It becomes more fluid to the point where you start to see that boundary between imagination and physicality start to melt away. You take enough LSD, you start to see the walls melting.
If you take drugs and realize you are God and that you imagine reality, how do you know that that too isn't just imaginary? After all, if substance is imaginary, then so are drugs. Thus, drugs can in no way be used as proof or support for any experience you have of anything. Yet Leo tries to offer psychedelic experiences as proof. Also, if Leo is God, and you are all God, and I am God, then how many gods are there?
But pure infinite imagination, prior to imagining any limits, has no limits whatsoever. Now, why is this the case? This is the case because of non-duality, because of oneness. It's impossible to actually draw a boundary between any two objects in the universe, because any boundary or object is imaginary. So everything becomes one. When everything is one, reality being one, there's nothing outside of it to limit it or constrain it or to tell it how to be. Therefore, it must be unlimited.
It is precisely because everything is one that there are limitations and laws. The whole point of the principle of oneness is that if you mess with one thing in existence, that act will have an effect on something else. Case in point, if you trivialize reality as being your imagination, then you also trivialize love and life and beauty, because it is all connected, it is all one. Thus I give him no point for unconditional love or non-dualism, despite what he claims. By stating that you create reality, he also blames you for reality.
You do not want to accept what I'm saying here, and you have a million excuses for why what I'm saying doesn't make sense, and why it is false, and why I'm crazy. But what I'm telling you is the absolute truth, and deep down you know this. Deep down, all of your excuses and all of your stories and all of your justifications are just something you're imagining.
But since he also implies that he himself created reality, I don't know why he goes off talking down on us from above to begin with. That's not the style of a fiducian, by the way. A fiducian type is very interested in exploring and sharing ideas with others and engaged in debates, something even Stefan Molyneux and Jordan Peterson does from time to time. I don't ever see that with this guy. He only seems to want to be the coach, the guru, the specialist. and that's why he's an urbanum and not fiduciam. Some people were saying I had mistyped him. I haven't. But anyway, I don't know what point to give him on non-blame. I guess he questions cultural assumptions, not really a problem there. But if he got all this from a Deepak Chopra book, then obviously he has not been questioning things too much. His emphasis on self-knowledge, as far as this video is concerned, only boils down to us being pure consciousness. But he naturally trivializes the other dimensions, since nothing else is real to him. So I cannot give him a score on that point. He misses the target. His idea of non-attachment is bastardized into escape from reality into aloneness, or alternatively, into control of your imagination, like the law of attraction. But again, I'm not sure about the latter. If he truly thought non-attachment and receptivity, he would tell you to accept your imagined reality, but not be attached to it, not take it seriously, but let it nourish you. And obviously he gets no point for transmitting spirituality or wisdom accurately. Some of what Leo teaches may be fine, but his highest teaching has problems. And I want to offer a tool to identify such problems, not just in the case of Leo, but with any teaching or ideology. Which is why I do this type of videos, to sharpen your awareness and thinking. Now, of course, you can dismiss what I say and believe that Leo is correct. But if that is the case, if you believe that you are just imagining the world, then what are you doing imagining me evaluating and debunking your own belief? Why do you imagine yourself pressing that dislike button below the video you yourself created? Or imagine all the comments? Is that any way to take responsibility for what you are imagining? For what you yourself are creating? I don't believe in Leo's metaphysics, so I can criticize it. But those who believe in it, if they are to be consistent, have no business responding or reacting at all. And if you do, then that suggests to me that you don't truly believe what Leo is saying, because you don't act like it.
I am just your own mind talking to you. You're hallucinating me right now. You hallucinated all my videos.